Member from Kitchener-Waterloo.
And to the Premier, I don't have to find that money. The Auditor General found that money for you, and it's $8 billion. So the Liberal government claims that the cupboard is empty, and the only solution is to fire
Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing
and sell off even more of the hydro system to Bay Street speculators. I think we can agree that there is a problem with the books. It's liberal incompetence, pure and simple. Wasting $1 billion on gas plants, $1 billion on eHealth, hundreds of millions on Ornge, and a whopping $8 billion on sweetheart deals for private developers will do that. That's what happens. It will create a problem with the books. But the good news is that there are solutions, Premier, like stopping P3s, closing HST loopholes, or cracking down on millionaire CEOs in the public sector. Is the Premier going to keep cutting schools and firing nurses so that she can afford to blow billions on P3s and corporate HST giveaways?
You know, Mr. Speaker, what's interesting is if we look across the world, really, we look at jurisdictions that are building infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. We look at jurisdictions that are
the member from Renfrew come to order.
Making sure that they have the ability to upgrade, Mr. Speaker, the infrastructure that will allow them to compete in the 21st century. You will see governments that are working with the private sector, Mr. Speaker. Now, I know that the NDP basically doesn't want to change anything. They don't want to review the assets, Mr. Speaker. They don't want to change the alcohol distribution system, Mr. Speaker. They don't want to build transit and transportation infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. They basically want to maintain the status quo as though that will make us competitive in the 21st century. Well, it won't, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be competitive, we're going to move ahead, and we're going to do that by making the decisions that will allow us to invest in this province.
Thank you. Stop the clock, please. Be seated, please. Be seated. Thank you. Supplementary.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last June, the Premier of this province said, will we implement a program of layoffs? Absolutely not. 50 nurses are being fired at CHEO, 42 nurses in Sudbury, 22 nurses in Cambridge, 15 nurses in Leamington, 18,000 nursing hours in New Liskeard, 15 PSWs in Guelph, 38 full-time equivalents in Timmins, 7 full-time equivalents in Ottawa. I would call that a program of layoffs. What does the Premier call it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I call it not even half the story, because, Mr. Speaker, as those changes are happening, there is hiring going on, Mr. Speaker. We are investing in the healthcare system. More than $21 billion in healthcare infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. 23 new hospitals have been built or are underway since 2003, Mr. Speaker. 5,000 doctors since 2003 and 24,000 nurses, Mr. Speaker. So is the healthcare system in a transition? Absolutely. Are we moving more care into the community? Absolutely. Have the funding formulas changed for hospitals? Yes, they have, Mr. Speaker. But that doesn't mean that there are fewer people in the system, Mr. Speaker. That means that we're delivering services in ways that people demand and need, and improving service in healthcare, Mr. Speaker.
Final supplementary.
You know, Premier, the people of this province aren't interested in your stories. They're interested in services. When a senior wonders why they can't get a care from a nurse, the Premier will say, it's because the well is dry. When a student is wondering why their neighbourhood school is closing, the Premier will say, because the well is dry.
Minister of Tourism.
When a parent has to quit their job because their affordable childcare space is cut, the Premier will say, it's because the well is dry. But when a Liberal-friendly construction firm shows up looking for a P3 contract with plenty of fat, the Liberals get out the checkbook. And when there is a Liberal scandal...
Minister of Economic Development, come to order.
Will the Premier do the right thing? Will she clean up the corruptions and scandals?
Stop the clock. The Minister of Economic Development chose to continue heckling after I said to stop, so now he's got 2. Please finish.
So the question, will the Premier do the right thing? Will you clean up the mess that is this government and address the scandals and start putting the people of this province ahead head of Liberal friends.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Order. Premier.
well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And underpinning the question that the member of the third party is asking is, will we stop changing things? Will we stop transforming government? Will we stop building, Mr. Speaker? Will we stop investing in education so that we can have a 21st century education system for our kids? Will we stop investing in transforming the healthcare system? No, Mr. Speaker, we won't. We are going to continue those investments. We are going to continue to work with our healthcare providers, with our educators, Mr. Speaker, to make the changes that are
Deputy
necessary.
House Leader.
The third party doesn't believe that we should be investing in transit. They don't believe we should be investing in transportation infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. They don't believe we should change anything. We do not ascribe to that belief system.
Answer.
We believe there must be change, and we believe that the investments that we are making right now are necessary for the 21st century economy, Mr. Speaker.